Lawsome by Consultwebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello to all our Lawsome listeners out there. Welcome back to the podcast. Today on the show, we're talking with Nick Werker, Marketing Director at Answering Legal, a company that provides law firms with a professional, highly trained answering service to make sure they never miss a client. In 2014, Nick started at Answering Legal in the sales department. After almost a year with the company, he was offered a position in the marketing department. He had written the content for the entire site and all of its blog posts. He's now been with Answering Legal for over 4 years and mostly focuses on creating new web pages for their buyer's journey and overseeing the content strategy for the entire website. Today's topic is business growth strategies for law firms. Welcome, Nick. Glad to have you on the show today.
It's awesome to be here. I'm honored and looking forward to it. Should be fun.
Excellent. Well, let's dive in, Nick. You clearly have experience in this field. You know that there are a lot of marketing strategies that any business can execute, but there's also law firms out there that don't even know where to begin in this journey. Plus, the legal profession is obviously super competitive. It can be difficult to ensure consistent revenue, a steady stream of new clients, and obviously without proper planning, you're doomed to fail. So I'd like to ask you, where should a law firm even begin to start this process, especially if they're feeling a little intimidated by these next steps?
I love this question because I'm a big proponent of look before you leap, right? And I give credit to a lot of attorneys because they're very entrepreneurial. You know, they go out on their own, they hang the sign, and law school, like we talk about, has not prepared attorneys to be business people. So the first thing that I tell people is that you should really get educated on what type of marketing or strategy that you should even be involved in the first place. So what I mean by that is sort of identify what you're going to go after, right? If you are a traffic ticket attorney, obviously it gets a little bit more complicated than you're just looking for people who have had traffic tickets, but you want to know where those people are actually starting their journey in order to get help with their traffic tickets. Are they on Facebook or social media? Are they doing a Google search? Is there a place where you could put a sign or a billboard that would get you a lot more traffic than it would be better than your efforts elsewhere? So I like to say get educated because there's a lot of simpler things that you can do that will set up the framework for success later on so that you can scale your business. So what do I mean by that is find out how to claim your Google business profile, which used to be Google My Business. It's basically just like the address and this listing on Google for your business. If you claim that, you put in your phone number, you can start posting on there, and that listing actually does appear in the search results if you do marketing sort of the right way, right? Mm-hmm. But you can build on just claiming that profile. So I would encourage attorneys to take advantage of all the things that you can do that can help you start the framework of marketing so that later on you'll be able to actually scale. What that looks like is different for each business, but look before you leap. Get educated on where your customers actually are going to be and how you are going to attack that strategy.
Another great practice is to have a client-focused or customer-centric law firm where every attorney can put themselves in their client's shoes and think about how they can provide the best client experience in a way that's really going to be efficient for the law firm, but also for the client themselves. Eventually, it's going to lead to, hopefully, new marketing ideas that are going to drive some inspiration and attracting more clients. What other benefits can a law firm have if they choose to really get focused on serving the clients and having that client a focused approach in their strategies?
Well, this can actually be sort of like a symbiotic relationship. The lawyer, the law firm, and the customer can both benefit from having a client-focused approach because if you meet the customer exactly where they are and you provide them only exactly what they need and what they're asking for, then you save time by not overextending yourself and trying to do too much, is how I would put it. I was just having a conversation with someone recently where I'll go back to the traffic ticket example, right? People who get traffic tickets consider them just really a nuisance, right? There's nothing, life-altering about a traffic ticket most of the time. Whereas when you need a family lawyer and you're getting a divorce, that's the sort of thing where you want to get even more educated by the attorney on how the process is going to go, what to expect in court. Maybe you rehearse a little bit before you actually go to court on your court date. So as a traffic ticket attorney, you wouldn't want your client to come into your office and have this lengthy consultation where you take too much time out of their day and really all you're doing is solving like a $200 to $500 problem. No, what you would do in a client-centric or client-focused law firm is, hey, send me a picture of the ticket. You don't even have to come to court. I'm going to handle this for you. Here's my fee. Here's how you can pay me. We'll let you know when it's done, what the result was, and we're going to fix this for you. We'll communicate with you every step of the way. You just saved so much time by not overextending yourself, right, and making the client come down there. So it's about knowing the client's needs and only really doing what is generally going to be asked of you.
That makes sense. And we've started into talking really generally about marketing and how to attract new business. And I think that's where a lot of law firms tend to go first. They think of those most common strategies, whether it be, I know I need to be on social media or investing in search engine optimization or paid advertising. Clearly, those platforms are all effective toward establishing a brand, getting your brand out there to attract clients. But I think what's also neglected or forgotten about is what happens once we get the phone to ring, right? Once that fall comes in, what are we doing? What's the marketing strategy? What's our communication strategy? Or going back to this last question, what's our client-centric strategy here? It's often neglected. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that.
So, based on that, if we've both identified that in working within the legal profession, talk a little bit about where law firms are, like where is that gap? What have you seen in the industry in that respect?
Again, I know I'm a broken record, but it's because I believe in the things that I'm talking about. I'm a big proponent of having a plan before you go out and make a change, right? So it's very easy to just say, oh, I'll go, I don't know, hire an answering service like we're talking about, right? They're going to fix the problem for me, which is not necessarily true. A service or anybody cannot fix a problem that you don't know that you have, right? So what I always tell all of the attorneys that I speak with first are you should lay out a plan for your phone system where you know who is going to answer the phone at what time of the day on which specific day, or even if the answer is no one's going to answer it, at least you should know where the phone is going to ring. If you're forwarding it to a cell phone, there's so many options that I could get into, right? But if you come to an answering service, right, and you say, oh, I have it, I don't know, on one phone over here, I have another phone over here. Well, by the time that an answering service receives those phone calls from you, we're not exactly sure that we're getting all of the calls that could possibly be coming to your firm, right? Are you giving out your cell phone to existing clients, and are they trying to call you and becoming really frustrated because you can't answer that phone call? We go back to this client-centric approach, right? So one of the things that I would tell that person is forward your cell phone calls on like a rollover basis to the service. This way, when an existing client tries to get a hold of you with your cell phone, they don't get this like impersonal sort of neglected response. They get a live representative of your firm, albeit not you, and we would tell them, you'll call them back as soon as you get out of court or out of a consultation, whatever the case may be. The thing that I think is the most positive outcome is I think every time that you sort of bring on infrastructure into your firm, you can measure something as a return on investment. Now, that's not necessarily monetarily. I think, if you bring on, I don't know, a document software, right? You're not necessarily going to make money off the document software, but you're going to save time, and that time can turn into either billable hours or going home early and watching TV and relaxing and giving back to yourself. So for an answering service, sure, we can answer calls for new customers and make sure that you never miss any calls, but that also equates to better taking care of your existing customers, like I already mentioned. your reputation, which again you could measure if you're into accounting and all that stuff. But if your reputation on the internet is that, oh, he never picks up the phone, don't even bother calling him, call his competitor, when you're getting reviews like that, that doesn't lend itself to a growing, successful business. So I think a lot of these things compound, and I'm getting ahead of myself and rambling, but if you're going to use an answering service, the first thing that you need to do is address your phone system as a whole before you try to take on this extra help.
And that's where, I think you hit on several such important points where a lot of lawyers, they're not trained to run a business in most instances, yet they still have that entrepreneurial spirit. But the biggest thing is, if you're leaning so heavily on marketing but not necessarily thinking about what's happening after that user experience, that is ultimately where that return on investment is either magnified or diluted significantly. And so why you can't often look at it directly as a one-to-one attribution of return on investment when you start taking care of your clients through the form of intake and answering calls and serving them well, there is no question it has proven itself time and time again, because we say this, just in casual conversation, that the best marketing you can do is word of mouth. Just treat a client well and they'll turn around and tell 10 other people over time. That is some of the most impactful marketing we can do, yet it's neglected right there on the phone more often than not. So thank you for that, Nick. Let's change gears a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of technology available for law firms. We talk about different tech options for law firms pretty regularly here on the Lawson podcast. With this evolution within the legal profession with respect to technology, we're seeing a lot of efficiency in law firms. So a lot of great things, positive things, not only for operations within a law firm, but positive things for the client and the experience overall. We still find that lawyers, even staff members of law firms, are very resistant to change and adapting some of this. What has been your experience in all of this? Are lawyers willing to replace part of their staff with maybe answering services or adapting technology and considering some of these evolution of law firm operations?
I take your point that lawyers used to be very resistant to change, and obviously out of necessity and maybe just evolution over the past few years, I've seen a lot of law firms get very caught up when it comes to technology. A lot of the lawyers that I speak to nowadays, the first thing that they'll say or really list off is all of the technology that they're using and sort of ask me, is this compatible with your system, or what's your recommendation, or should I get this new thing I've heard about? So it's sort of shifted from this, I don't need any of that, to am I using the right set of tools, which is really great to see, because I think it's one of those things that the proof is in the pudding, right? You use the technology, it made your life better and your law firm more profitable, or it allowed you to run more smoothly, so you rely on it now. And my experience in the answering service place has always been that it's funny, so people will call us up and they'll say, my receptionist is retiring, or somebody just quit and I have this really quick need that I need you to fill. And it's taken us a while to educate law firms. It's taken us a few years, actually, to educate lawyers that that's not necessarily the best way to use an answering service, right? And that whole mindset of an answering service replaces my staff was an additional obstacle to overcome, because that's not really our goal, right? What we want to do is become this like bolt-on extension of your law firm that allows you to grow. So if you have receptionists in your office, that's great. I'm sure that you can really like uptrain them, right, to become more productive members of your firm. But what we're focused on here is just making sure that you never miss a phone call that comes into your office, because every phone call is really an opportunity, right? If it's a new client, you have an opportunity to grow your business and help somebody new and make some more money. If it's an existing client, it's an opportunity to provide really good service. So what I tell lawyers is is when I so I'm trying to combat this idea, right? This stigma that like an answering service replaces my staff. So what we provide are three solutions, really. We can replace your staff if you want. You can forward all of your calls to us on the first ring. We'll only try to call you if you've predetermined that the type of call we're on should be transferred to you. Otherwise, we'll take a message or perform a legal intake and follow all your instructions. We can answer just at certain times of the day. So your phone calls will automatically forward to us when you leave the office outside of your business hours, 9 to 5, right? You're in the office from 9 to 5, the phone rings on your desk, or that's my phone over there. And when you leave at 5:01, right, if your phone was going to ring, you won't hear it, it'll come straight to me. What most lawyers seem to prefer over the years is sort of this hybrid approach where they are able to answer all the calls internally first, whether that be a receptionist, whether that be a staff member, whether that be themselves on their cell phone, a sole practitioner trying to save money on overhead costs. And that's really our sweet spot because we want to help you grow. We don't want to be this, if you forward us all the calls, it's going to be more expensive for you, right? So if you answer the calls that you can and we only handle the calls that you would miss, well, then you're saving money and we're helping you capitalize on opportunities that you may not have gotten to without us. So it's been weird and a little bit difficult to sort of replace that idea. But I got to give lawyers a lot of credit that it's come a long way. There's not many people that I speak to that are like, I don't need that. They're very open to the idea of like this add-on to my infrastructure that can help me capitalize on opportunities rather than, you're just outsourced staff replacing my call answering. So it's been very, very interesting to watch over the past few years.
And I've seen that too. I think there's this misconception sometimes, certainly not all situations, but often a misconception that a law firm owner wants to maintain control over their brand, obviously over their reputation, but also over that intake. There's so much concern placed in that it needs to be perfect, it needs to be right, you need to represent the firm just as they have envisioned. But the challenge is that they're not answering the phone. So they're not even giving that experience in certain instances. So just as you're saying, like there's no single formula here. It really rests on where the firm sits, their gaps, and ultimately trying to nurture those gaps so that the client is the first one that has the focus, and they're the ones who are actually getting that consistent experience with the business. So important. Nick, let's keep moving here because we've talked a little bit about strategy. You opened up this interview and saying, I don't recall exactly the analogy you used, but basically I heard aim first, then shoot. Have the strategy from the beginning, and that's what's ultimately going to lead the execution from day to day. Part of implementing any strategy for effective business is going to be in defining and really building out strong key point indicators, or what the industry refers to as KPIs, to drive that. What's your experience with KPIs? And I'd be curious to know, do you see or do you feel a law firm should be analyzing their business strategy, their business growth overall, and its effectiveness using KPI metrics?
I love this question because deep down, I am just a very numbers-oriented marketer. I do like talking to people and helping people is my passion, but I don't think that I would be very valuable if I didn't understand the root of the argument, right? Which is, how do we all make money? At the end of the day, we want to remain open so that we can help people, but we have to make sure that the bottom line makes sense. So it's very important for a law firm to know their numbers. I spoke with this guy who runs, I shouldn't say this guy, he's a very well-respected attorney. His name is Mike Morse. He has one of the biggest law firms in the country, and he's obsessed with his numbers. Mm-hmm. So he knows how many leads his campaigns are generating, right? So that's one KPI that I want you to know. How many leads or potential new clients are coming in as a result of your marketing? And to get into the nitty-gritty, you should know which channels, right? So like how many leads do you get from Facebook? How many do you get from Google? How many were referrals? How many came from your flyers that you handed out, your direct mailers, so on and so forth, right? How many leads did you generate? And then out of those leads, which ones were you able to convert into new customers? So you can, that's a conversion rate. How many or what percent of my direct mailers became customers? What percent of my Google leads became customers? And then you figure out how much each lead costed you, how much money you made off of each closed customer, and you can figure out what makes you the most money or what gives you this best return on investment. So I think some of the best KPIs that a law firm can really utilize are first taking a look at how effective their marketing has been, and so if the leads are coming in, right, and you're not closing a lot of them, then the story tells you that maybe you're not good at closing the leads and converting them to customers. Or if you have a high conversion rate, but you're not getting as many leads, then maybe there's something wrong with that specific channel of marketing. Maybe you need to reinvest or switch up the creative or go with a new company or maybe hire a company because you're doing it yourself. So these numbers can all tell a different story, but I think one of the first things when we talk about this like results-based marketing is identifying the numbers of the number of clients or the number of leads that come in, how many turn to clients, and then the actual return on investment.
Yeah, it really isn't rocket science. I think you can make it as robust and dynamic as you want, but just as you're suggesting, Nick, those few fundamental metrics are going to show you whether you're growing and exceeding in any succeeding in any particular area that you're investing in. And so I second that. I think those are critical elements. And then naturally, as you get used to building this as a habit, coming back to these numbers, watching growth or lack thereof, just as Nick suggests, that presents the opportunity to really dive in. It gives you actually something to evaluate and assess, as opposed to just using gut instincts, which we all know will steer you wrong more often than not. Nick, thank you for joining the show. I'd like to ask you somewhat of a random question. Anything I didn't ask you that you would have wished I would have asked you?
I think something I've been talking about a lot lately is getting the right people into your business, because at the end of the day, we're all just people. Like what I provide is a service of people who answer phones. So how to identify the right people to make sure that your law firm is on the right track, because I think it's a Richard Branson quote, right? If you take care of your employees will take care of your customers.
It's a great point. And we see it today. I think anymore, we haven't really even touched on the idea of taking care of your own in front of you. But we're coming out of this pandemic, and it seems like there's been a major shakeup in the job industry. And I think law firms are, one of those industries that have stood out of, there's been a lot of turnover, a lot of challenges. And if that's you and you're listening, it's time to start doing some introspective thinking there and evaluating, are you taking care of the team in front of you? I think, Nick, that is such a valuable point that we can easily neglect in getting so caught up in the business metrics like the KPIs or the marketing strategy, when the people right in front of us are the ones who are ultimately setting that reputation, setting the bar on that every single day. Nick, thank you for joining us. Any final thoughts?
My final thought is, Tanner, you're a wonderful host. I love the show. I've had the opportunity to watch a few episodes over the past few days because my nerves get the better of me and I want to be extra prepared. Thanks for having me, and this has been a ton of fun.
Great having you, Nick. What's the best way for our listeners to contact you?
So my email is nick, N-I-C-K, @answeringlegal.com. You can pester me. I'm happy to respond to you. I'm an email addict. I'm trying to get better at it, but I'm not, so I'll probably get back to you really quickly. And my website is answeringlegal.com. There's phone numbers all over there. We're a call center, so if you can't get in touch with anybody, that would be a major problem on my part.
Thank you, Nick.
Lawsome by Consultwebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next Lawsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.